Hi everybody, this is Kimberly Vanderwert, Director of World Awaits Academic Consulting. Welcome to my second ever Facebook Live. Today we're going to be talking about two additional problems that I see international students making. Those problems that we're going to discuss today are that students perhaps don't understand all of the elements that are associated with the application process, so all of the things that need to be accomplished, and it can become very confusing, so we're going to talk about a strategy to help you with that. And then also a problem I see frequently with my international students is that they don't quite know how to show off to the admissions officers. So we'll talk about what that problem is here in a minute. But really quickly, I just want to sort of introduce myself a little bit to those who maybe don't know me already. So as I said, my name is Kimberly Vanderwert, Director of World Awaits Academic Consulting. So I am a college counselor from the United States, and that means that I help students apply to colleges in the United States and in Canada. I help with anything in the application process from start to finish. So that could be researching schools, putting together plans for how you're going to apply to each individual institution, so a guide, if you will, standardized testing preparation, as well as getting student visas and all of those pieces in between. So I absolutely love what I do, and I have learned some things over the course of my career that I just want to share with you guys so that hopefully you all can have really strong applications in the future. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I see international students doing. Quickly, my usual disclaimer is I don't want to say that all international students are doing this. It's just some. I don't want to have some sort of generalization, but they are things that I see frequently, and so I think it's good to be aware of them so that hopefully you don't commit the same mistakes. So the first one is just sheer confusion about what all is involved in applying to schools in the United States. And this confusion is super normal. It's totally to be expected. Students within the United States are confused by the process as well because there are simply just so many pieces that go into the application process. And I talked a little bit about that last week when I talked about the timeline, some of those pieces that go into the application. But as I mentioned, the United States doesn't have a centralized education system. So unlike in other countries where students will take a final exam at the end of their secondary career, which will kind of direct them into their school, their post-secondary school, or even the career they're going to go into, the United States doesn't have that. And each institution is independent, which means that they determine what they want in an applicant. They determine the requirements. They have their own application processes. And so when all of these institutions have different expectations for what they want in an applicant, it can become very confusing, So University 1 wants the applicant to do A, B, and C, and University 2 wants the applicant to do X, Y, and Z. And so all of these pieces get really confusing, especially when you factor in the fact that students often apply to 5, 10, maybe even 20 schools. So all of those pieces are moving around, and they all need to be different and unique to the institution, so it can get very confusing, understandably. That's where I come in as an educational consultant. I really hone in on students' skills, and I know a lot about the institutions around the United States, so I know how to put applications together that work for those individual institutions. That said, if you are unable to hire a consultant to help with that sort of thing, you can do it on your own. It's just very time consuming. But my recommendation for that is to determine what schools you want to attend. So do some preliminary research. What do you want in a school? What are you looking for with regards to what you want to study? And then start looking at those institutions' requirements and taking real note of the requirements, the due dates, and then additionally, start looking into the campus culture. So what is the school like? What are the students there like? What did those students who have already been admitted, what did they add to their applications? What kind of test scores did they have? What are they doing to get into those schools? And that will really help you get a pretty good picture of what each individual school is all about. And so then, when you put your application together, you can start to kind of hone in on those skills that you display and that you possess that this institution wants, and then change it a little bit so that it's in alignment with this other institution, and do that for all of the institutions you're interested in. Again, this is time consuming and can be sort of challenging. There's a lot of research that goes into it, but it can really help you have a strong application. So the other thing that I want to talk about that I often see international students doing is failing to really understand what admissions officers are looking for in their applicants. And so again, I also talked about this a little bit last week when I was talking about how students need to really display a passion for something. And this goes into what admissions officers call a T-shaped applicant. So that means that, this part of the T is showing a breadth of interest and a breadth of knowledge, so in a variety of areas. But then this part of the T is really where you're getting some depth, and you're starting to really invest yourself in one or two activities. And this is where your passion is, this part of the T. And so knowing this, students will start to put down all of these accomplishments that are in line with their passions. But the mistake that's made is they list them off. They're just, I did this, that, and the other thing in my secondary or post-secondary career. And, it's just really not showing a true story of who you are when you do it that way. Certainly those accomplishments are important, and they're, you put a lot of work into achieving those accomplishments, and so you do want to note them, but it's in how you note them that's important. There's a good way to tell a story and there's a bad way to tell a story, and you want your story to be good. So instead of simply listing off all of your accomplishments, you want to be telling a story. So the admissions officers, they're reading applications all day long, every day, that's their job. And so they're reading through all of these students' accomplishments, and they really are looking for something that stands out. And what stands out is knowing who you are as a whole. So that means showing off your breadth and your depth of knowledge and interests and skills throughout your entire application. So it's going to be reflected in your grades, in your activities, extracurricular activities that you'll list off, and the things that you've been involved in over the course of your secondary or post-secondary lives. But most importantly, it's through your application essay. And this essay is really kind of the bow on top of the package. It's where you can tie all of those pieces together and explain how they're important to you. And so I have two pieces of advice for preparing for the essay portion. In terms of showing off your story and who you are. So first of all, it's to engage in some self-reflection. So think about, what is unique to you? What can you offer that others cannot? What are your skills? And start to journal about that. Write a journal, just, free writing. No structure, just write about what you have to offer an institution, what makes you unique. And then, and I recommend doing this for a couple of weeks, but then start thinking about stories in your life or instances in your life that display these traits that you want the university to know about, and write those stories out. And then the other thing that you can do to help you hone in on this is to ask others, because, sometimes we have skills that we're not even aware of ourselves, but other people see it in us and they know that you're really good at this, that, or the other. So ask your friends and your family, what are some things that are really wonderful about you? And hopefully you'll become aware of some new things, and you can start to then reflect on those, and journal about those for a period of weeks, so that when you sit down to craft your application, you already have some stories there and you already have some direction in how you're going to put the story of you together into one application. So those are my 2 pieces of advice today. Put together an application that shows your story, the story of you, and then also become very familiar with each institution that you want to apply to, and become very aware of all of the moving pieces that are involved in the application process. So that's what I have for you. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions, and I will address them at a later show. But next week we will be covering 2 more problems that I see with international students frequently. So that's it. Thank you. Take care.